and welcome to the Flourishing Center Podcast. I'm Amelia Zhivatovskaya, your host and founder of the Flourishing Center. We are training the change agents of the world and equipping them with research-based tools for healthy, happy, and successful living. And we're so grateful that you're here. Each episode features 3 sections. First is the Science Says section, where we summarize a recent research study and show you how to put the science into action. Next, we give you a research-based life hack with simple strategies for incorporating positive psychology into your life for greater well-being. And then our Practitioner Corner is where we interview someone who's out there living, breathing, and spreading positive psychology in their own unique way. Learn about how they're growing their personal and professional work and get inspired with strategies for how you might use positive psychology in your own life. Thanks for listening, and let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the podcast. We will start off our episode today by reviewing a new research study published on the concept of positivity resonance. And then in our life hack section, we will explore how you too can build your own sense of positivity resonance and sense of connection to people around you. Then in our positive psychology practitioner corner, I would love to introduce you to Amy Holdsman. She is the founder and president of Essential Leadership, and she puts positive psychology into practice by helping people make a social impact on the world. Let's dive in. Today's Science Says is an article recently published in the Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin titled Well-Being Correlates of Perceived Positivity Resonance, Evidence from Trait and Episode Level Assessments. Dr. Barbara Fredrickson and her colleagues Major, Nguyen, and Lundberg conducted a study looking at what is the relationship between the concept of positivity resonance and different elements of well-being. Now, if you're not familiar with positivity resonance, don't panic. It's actually a relatively new concept that Fredrickson and her colleagues have been researching for the past few years. They have described a very unique experience that can be shared between 2 or more people. And positivity resonance is described as an interpersonal connection that's characterized by 3 elements. 1 is a sense of shared positivity, 2, mutual care and concern, and 3, behavioral or biological synchrony. The first, shared positivity, is just that emotional experience that's jointly experienced between different people. So this could be together feeling grateful, together feeling happy, together smiling. It's being on the same emotional wavelength. Mutual care refers to the extent in which for a moment the person shows that they are invested in the well-being of another. And then the third, behavior and biological synchrony, refers to the extent that either through nonverbal behaviors, which could be as simple as both nodding or both smiling or both leaning into one another, or something that's often marked by autonomic physiological experiences. This could be an increase in oxytocin being created. It could be both people having an increase to their heart rate or a decrease to their heart rate, and also something referred to as neural firing in the same tempo. So they've actually showed that when people are in biological synchrony together, their brain is also on the same wavelength, that there's a neural synchrony that's been demonstrated by other researchers in publications that happened last year that showed that when 2 people are in love or when 2 people are connected, you can actually see similar patterns within their brain lighting up. So this positivity resonance is one that is happening on a behavioral level, on an emotional level, and on a neural level. And what these researchers aim to do is they conducted 3 different studies to say what's actually happening when people are experiencing those moments of connection and how does that relate to other elements of well-being. In the first study, they had people think back to all of their experiences and encounters with other people that they interact with on a daily basis or regular basis, such as their family, their friends, their neighbors, their work colleagues, customers, etc. And then they use different measures of positivity resonance to assess how high or low they were on that experience. And then they compare that to things like their habitual experience of positive emotions, their well-being measures, their flourishing mental health measures, their depressive symptoms, and their illness symptoms. What they found in that first study was that when they controlled for things like positive emotions, they still found that people who scored higher on this perceived positivity resonance scored higher on flourishing mental health, lower levels of depression, and fewer illness symptoms. However, there's a limitation to studying things in this way. You're just kind of asking people after the fact, do you believe that you have frequent moments of connection with other people, and how does that correlate with other elements of well-being? So for that reason, they conducted a second and a third study utilizing a specific methodology called the Day Reconstruction Method, the DRM. According to researchers, the DRM provides a rich episode-by-episode account of behavioral and emotional experiences across an entire day. They define an episode as a respondent scene that they would recall or perform. And this gives us information about what were they actually doing and who were they with. And they give us an opportunity to notice what were people actually doing in real time, and how does that relate to their experience of positivity resonance, positive emotions, and measures of well-being. They use this method to then compute correlations between the person-level perceived positivity resonance and then their experience of socially pleasant emotions and non-social pleasant emotions. They were able to confirm the same way that they did in their initial study that positivity resonance was its own unique experience, that it wasn't just that people experience positive emotions, that there's something unique to this social experience of being connected with others. Thus, they found that having positivity resonance has been correlated with greater levels of flourishing mental health, lower depressive symptoms, and fewer illness symptoms and fewer measures of loneliness. And that this was after they took into account just how generally happy or positive the person is and how many social interactions they have. That there's this unique experience of deep connection that's found through positivity resonance. And of course, the great news is positivity resonance is something that we can build. So next up in our life hack section, we're going to explore how you too can experience positivity resonance and perhaps build the well-being of those around you through this beautiful and deep connection that we can make with others. Today's life hack builds upon our Science Says research, where we reviewed a study published by Dr. Barbara Fredrickson and her colleagues on the construct of positivity resonance. We define positivity resonance as an experience, an interpersonal connection that we have with other people that has three core functions. One is a sense of positive emotion that's shared between people. Two is a sense of mutual care or concern. And three is some element of a neural or behavioral synchrony. So first, let's take a look at how they measure perceived positivity resonance, because that gives us some clues about how we can actually build this within ourselves. So for example, they ask, on a scale of 0 to 100%, how much have you experienced that you're able to attune to other people's words and experiences? You experience a flow of conversation with other people. You feel energized. You and other people share a mutual understanding of one another. You and other people are mutually responsive to one another's needs. You feel a sense of mutual trust with other people. You and other people feel mutually focused on the best side of one another. And you feel in sync with one another. These questions give us ideas around how we can actually build these things. Can we show people that we feel trusting, that we feel connected? Can we show people that we're understanding what it is that they're saying, that we're really present with them? Can we create an environment where we're using our body to mirror other people's behaviors and mirror their body posture to show them that we're with them? Other questions that they use is they ask things like, you experience a mutual sense of warmth and concern toward the other person. Were you able to attune to and connect with other people's experiences? Did thoughts and feelings flow with ease between you and others? Do you feel energized or uplifted by the company of others? Were you and others responsive to one another's needs? So the offering here is that the next conversation that you take part in, can you find a way to allow yourself to lean even more into the person. Lean into what they're saying. Perhaps connect with their body language, their emotional state. Be really present to what they're saying. Can you allow yourself to feel connected to their words? Show them that you care about what they're talking about. On the one hand, some people would say, well, in order for me to feel so synchronized or connected to the person that I'm talking to, I need to know that the person and I, we have things in common, that we're on the same wavelength. But what if you were to practice positivity resonance as a muscle that you could build? What if any person that you decided to build a skill with would be someone that you could attune yourself to and connect with in a way that builds their well-being and your well-being? What if you allowed yourself to deeply care about the person you're talking to, even if that moment-by-moment care was for someone who's your barista at your local coffee place or a customer that you interact with? What we know is that there's something about positivity resonance that's different than just feeling a positive emotion. It is about caring for someone and feeling cared by them. And while we can't control how people feel about us or what they're thinking or doing, we can control our own behavior. We can allow ourselves to perhaps fall in love with the next person that you speak to, even if it's just for a moment, even if it's just to get the added benefit that positivity resonance can make on your own well-being, which according to these research studies shows that it can correlate with a greater sense of well-being, decreased depression, decreased loneliness, and decreased risk of illness. So give it a go. Connect with, resonate with the people around you. Think of this as a muscle that you can build, a muscle that builds your experience of warm, tender, and social emotions. And perhaps if we have more people positively resonating with one another, we can make some profound change to the world around us. Hello, everyone. My guest today is Amy Holdsman. She is the founder and president of Essential Leadership, an organization that offers coaching for purposeful engagement and social impact. She's joining us today from Mount Airy, a neighborhood in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And a little known fact about her, sometimes we like to do things that you might not know about her, but if you know Amy, you know that she is a dog lover. She has 3 puppies that she takes with her everywhere she goes. She has been putting positive psychology into practice in a unique way, and I'm so excited to have her join us today and tell us a bit more about her journey. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you, Amelia.
Amy, tell us, what got you started into helping people lead more purposeful lives, making an impact in the world?
Well, thank you for asking that question. I would say that I've spent the last 25 years of both my life and my career, particularly in Philadelphia, in the nonprofit sector. And when I started my journey, I really wanted to do something kind of simple, which was make a difference. And so I looked for a career in nonprofits and was lucky to find a lot of different roles, leadership roles, first in nonprofit organizations and then in philanthropy. And so I had a moment earlier this year to take a pause from moving forward in that career. And that's when actually I found your program, the Flourishing Center, and the certificate program in positive psychology, and decided that there was a way that I could integrate all the pieces of my career, both in nonprofits and in philanthropy and in helping others. I had been a coach in a previous iteration of my career, and pull that all together and help people find the ways that they wanted to engage and show up in the world as philanthropists, as people who wanted to make an impact, as other people also, as they wanted to make a difference.
That's amazing. And what are some of the different types of impact that you've seen be possible when people get excited and committed to making a change?
Well, there's a lot of different ways that I guess there's different ways that they could choose to become involved. I mean, they could show up as a volunteer somewhere. They could serve on a board of directors in the community. They could take different jobs. They could become an executive director or work on the staff of a nonprofit. There's so many ways that people could show up. But I think what's the most exciting in the work that I've done is helping people find their voice and the way that they want to show up. So, one example was I worked with a client who had so many things coming at her. She's so amazing and she's so fantastic. And she, people were beginning to recognize, people in nonprofit organizations were beginning to recognize that she had a lot of value to bring to the table. And it's very difficult when so many things are coming at you to figure out who to say yes to and who to say no to. And so many people that I work with are yes people. They want to say yes to everything because they really want to make a difference. But in some ways, helping people become more discerning about who they say yes to helps them find their own clarity, find their purpose, and really be more effective and more impactful. Let's say even with fewer causes or fewer organizations. So I would say, kind of helping people become more discerning about their yeses helps them be more effective in what they say yes to.
That's amazing, Amy. And I know that you take people through a journey and a process, as you said, a self-discovery process of helping them figure out what do they want and what's important to them, and that there's certain things that are essential, as the name of your company, to effective leadership. Can you tell us more about the recipe that you utilize when working with people?
Sure. Thanks for asking. Again, I intend to get to know everybody and what their journey is and what their goals are before we start our work together. So while there is indeed a recipe, I would say it's sort of a customized recipe for each client that I work with. But essentially what we do is we ultimately do a deep dive into understanding what people's values are, really what motivates them. When you're doing work with purpose and you're looking to make an impact, you have to understand what drives you. And so we do some work in identifying people's values, and then that goes hand in hand with understanding and getting to know people's strengths as well. So one of the things I learned and was affirmed in positive psychology was, leading from your strengths and working with your strengths and understanding what's right and really capitalizing on what you're good at. So a combination of doing a deep dive of understanding people's values as well as their strengths, and then we take those internal aspects of somebody's being, and we begin to identify the issues that are of importance to them. Once we know their values and strengths, we begin to dive into the issues and the area that really motivate them. And that could be obviously anything from education on a broad scale to the environment to arts, whatever it is that kind of gets them going. And then we develop a strategy for that engagement. As I said, in many cases, it could be simple volunteering to board or committee work to really sort of a deep dive engagement to sometimes people choose to make a career change. So there's, once we begin to understand the elements that are most important and where they can make a difference, then we develop a strategy to execute to see how that engagement goes. And there's oftentimes, we try a few things out. It's not a simple recipe, one size fits all. It's really trial through engagement.
That's awesome, Amy. Thank you so much. And I also know that you, like all of our positive psychology practitioners, really focus on utilizing these skills and these techniques and these tools in your personal life so as to be able to use them in your professional life. And I'm curious, what are some of the key concepts or key interventions in positive psychology that you feel have made the biggest impact to your life?
Oh gosh, there's so much. I think many of your listeners are familiar with your PERMA V model, and I think there's pieces of each aspect of that model that I've integrated into my life. Probably that I can focus on a few, and probably in vitality is most present and real for me, and that each day that I wake up, I'm incorporating, I'm walking in the woods with the dogs, I'm having a yoga class, I'm getting myself in the frame of mind where I could be most helpful and impactful and present for all of my clients. And it's something that I've also worked with many of my clients to incorporate into their lives as well, in the way that that shows up for them. But I can't say enough about positive psychology and sort of the integration into my daily life. And again, as that shows up in philanthropy. I mean, philanthropy is ultimately the love of people. And so it shows up in relationships. It shows up in everything that we do.
That's awesome. And I'm curious if you could speak more about the role of philanthropy for you throughout your whole life, because if I'm not mistaken, and I think that you've mentioned before how giving back or being of service seems to have been woven into your upbringing and the way that you've seen the world, even from a young age.
Yeah, I think that I haven't thought about that too much. That's an interesting question because it's something that I do with all of my clients. And that is sort of finding out what their money messages are and how they learned about philanthropy and where in their life it showed up. And I think for me, it's just something that's always been present, and less from a where do I give my money and more of where do I give of myself. And in philanthropy and in my line of work, we often talk about time, talent, treasure, and ties. How do we give those 4 T's? If we're going to give our time, what are we giving it to? If we're going to follow that time with money, and our own talents and what we bring to the table, and how do we leverage our own relationships for the cause that we believe in. And I think for me, I don't even know. I can't point to something in particular, but I know that it sort of came from a very early age, that I knew there was something bigger than me. And I knew that I had the capacity to be of service. And so while I can't point to any one particular thing, it's just something that's completely ingrained in how I choose to live my life.
It's beautiful. And we know that research shows that when people commit to acts of kindness or to behaving altruistically, one of the amazing things that it does is it pulls them into an other-centered world, an other-centered reality, where they're able to in some ways step outside of themselves, step outside of the obstacles of their day-to-day life in order to be able to connect with something bigger than themselves.
There's just something about the connection for me. Again, connection with a cause larger than myself, but also connection with people that are also working towards the same goal. It makes me realize that people are more alike than they are different. If I'm working as a mentor and helping somebody with her journey towards college like I do, I don't always feel like I'm the one helping. I feel like we're both growing and learning through a relationship. And so I find that to be incredibly enriching as well. Oftentimes we all spend time with people who are like ourselves. And sometimes when we spend time and share an experience with people who are quite different, we realize that there's more connecting us than separating us.
It's beautiful. And I know that part of what you've also experienced is the benefit of almost this intergenerational connection as well, or you work with philanthropy throughout many different generations. And I'm curious, what are some of the things that you're noticing between giving today versus how giving might have been, or service might have been performed maybe just 10 years ago?
Well, thank you for asking that question. Again, there's the world today is full of many more people that, while they might not define themselves as philanthropists, they are indeed giving back. They're giving of their money, they're giving of their time and their talents. And I find that people who are doing that now, of a certain generation, particularly millennials, particularly Gen X, are looking to make an impact and are looking for an immediate impact and looking to get involved. So I would say philanthropy of a different generation, maybe a little bit more traditional. And in traditional, it could be a little more hands-off. And the next generation that's coming through now is really looking for more purposeful engagement and more meaning and more connection. And if they're giving of their money, then they're also giving of their time, and they're just looking to get involved and affect change in a way that they may do also in their careers and in their lives. There's just a much more urgent and looking for more connection.
And I love how you pointed out, and repeat those for us one more time, the 4 T's.
The 4 T's are time, talent, treasure, and ties.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. It's such a powerful thing to think of. I remember when I was a college student, I used to donate my blood because I was like, I didn't have much to give. But consciously, I didn't really know. And it's interesting because I think I've had to actually counter some of the beliefs that I've inherited from childhood. Coming from a communist family, my family immigrated to the U.S. when I was 5, and I remember my dad used to kind of poo-poo when I would want to volunteer places because he would look at it as like, why would you work for free? Mm-hmm. And I used to look at my dad and I would be so embarrassed. Like I would it's one of those like father moments where you're like, please do not ever say that in public, please, Dad, Mm-hmm. But the message I received was like it wasn't really ingrained. Like my mother had a heart of gold and she gave and gave and gave to anyone in need of anything. She would give you her right arm if you needed it. Mm-hmm. Whereas it was interesting, this like message where it wasn't really ingrained as like a family dynamic thing that we did. And when I started to just want to give back in college, I was like, I'm a college student entertaining parties to pay my way through school, and I've got blood. I'll donate my blood regularly because that's what I have. I'll give what I have. And so I
absolutely,
I love those teas. They're beautiful.
Oh, absolutely. And again, because there's so many people, even if they have financial resources to give, don't think of themselves as philanthropists, because there's an image of philanthropist as an expectation that they need to wait until the end of their career and then they need to dive into philanthropy. Instead, now people want to make change now, and they want to get involved, and they want to see things. They want to move the needle on a certain issue. If there's an urgent, pressing need in education, they want to address it now. And there are many ways to do that. And sometimes money's always effective, but pairing money with your talents that you bring to the table and other people just goes a lot further. So people can be philanthropists, even if they don't think of themselves in that traditional model.
And I'm curious, as you know, and many of our listeners know, we focus a lot here on the importance of self-care. Our motto is self-care is healthcare. And this is the motto that's adopted by the field of mind-body medicine, and we avidly bring it into positive psychology. And I'm curious, what are some of the self-care practices from positive psychology that you bring into your life that support you?
So for me, it's time outdoors. And that's why I keep getting more dogs, because because I can't imagine. I live, as you said, in the Mount Airy section of Philadelphia, and we're surrounded by many, many acres of the Wissahickon, which is a beautiful wooded area. So I feel like I'm in the middle of the city, and I can also escape into the woods on a daily basis. So that time outdoors, it's usually first thing in the morning and sometimes again in the afternoon, and that's with the dogs. And I practice yoga. I've probably been practicing yoga since my second son was born, and he's now 19 years old. And it's just something that I do and need to do and fit into my life, usually, 5 times a week, let's say. And it gets me into a place where I can be both effective and somewhat sane with the rest of my life if I'm able to practice on a regular basis.
That's beautiful. I love that. And as we wind down, I'm curious what you might offer to our listeners around any recommendations from positive psychology that would help them maybe take steps towards improving their well-being, of things that have worked for you.
Well, that's a wonderful question. And I found until I took the certificate in applied positive psychology, that I was resistant to a lot of the very basic suggestions for increased well-being. I mean, obviously I did the yoga and the dog walking, but the gratitude journal was something that I've known, I've thought about, it's been suggested, and I just didn't do it. And when I started taking the certificate program, I gave it a try. And I have to tell you, it really works. I started each morning by writing just 3 things that I was grateful for. And I found it changed my mood, it changed my day, it changed the things that I noticed. So it's a really simple suggestion that once I stopped resisting, I found increased my well-being and my happiness.
That's amazing. Thank you, Amy. And the last question is a question around having any rules or mottos to live by, something that nurtures and nourishes you.
Rules and mottos to live by. I would, I would say that we could all spend some time focusing on what brings us joy. And as I said, for me, I've said it several times, I think being outside, being in the woods, being in nature, not only gives me a sense of calm and well-being, but also brings joy. And I think that people, we could all benefit by understanding and by seeking out and by experiencing more joy in our lives.
It's beautiful. Well, it's been a joy to be here with you today, Amy. And I would, how can people learn more about your work and possibly either contact you, or if they know of someone who's looking for engaging in a more purposeful way and giving back in their community or in society, how can they contact you to learn more about your work?
Thank you for asking. So I have my website, and the website address is all one word. It's essentialleadership.us. And on the website, it tells a little bit more about my services, a little bit more about me. And there's also a way to schedule a complimentary 20-minute consultation call to find out more about the services and how we could possibly work together.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for giving us your time and your talent and so many other beautiful, beautiful gifts today, Amy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for everything.
Thank you so much for listening. And quick question for you. Are you currently subscribing to our podcast? Have you downloaded it? If you haven't, please take a moment to do that. That is so helpful for us. It's helpful for iTunes and helpful for other listeners to know that you are getting value from this podcast and that perhaps they too can get value from this podcast as well. So if you could give us some ratings on iTunes, download us, tell us what you think, and reach out. We would love to hear from you. Send a message to info@theflourishingcenter.com if you have an area of your life that you would like hacked, that you would like some tools or techniques in. Or perhaps there's an area of positive psychology that you would like to learn more information about. Every single week, there are dozens of research studies that are coming out. We comb through those research studies to put together just a little sampler of some of the studies that we think are best. But if there's something you want to learn about, I would love, love, love to review it for you. So send me a message, info@theflourishingcenter.com. Until then, I hope you put some of this into practice. I hope you feel inspired. I hope you feel like you get to show up in some way today in a way that helps you feel good and empowers and inspires those around you. Thanks for listening, and we'll connect with you soon.